Good evening. We're so glad to have you here. And before we get started, I do want to make a couple more acknowledgments, and no in particular order. But Robert Hendricks, as he finishes his salad, if you'll stand for just a moment. Robert Hendricks is the chairman of our Technology Commission, but he's also the chairman of our Engage Alpharetta Committee. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Nancy Treaster, I think, is here somewhere. If you'll stand, yes, and Nancy is leading our brand Alpharetta, and she's sitting next to Shane Jackson with Jackson Healthcare, who's leading our Grow Alpharetta, our incubator effort. And then is Doug Keith here? Doug Keith is with Siemens, and he's leading our Build Alpharetta, our infrastructure plan. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge them. And real quick, if you're here, if you're part of our Technology Commission, if you'll stand for just a moment, we'd love to recognize you. If you'll stand, if you're here with those companies. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing. Quick question. How many of you either own your business or are responsible for getting clients to your business? I know I am. Most of you know me as the mayor of Alpharetta, and I'm privileged to serve in that capacity. But my other job, in fact, I've got two of my partners here, John Hypes and Karen Cashin, are in the room. And my other job, though, in practicing law is to obtain and attract clients. And so about 3-4 weeks ago, I was doing just that. I was at a golf course, and that's my favorite way to try and attract clients. And there I had an existing client, and I had a prospective client. And the whole goal was to get the prospective client to decide to give us some closings. That's what I do for a living. And so the day started like many of the days have been lately. It was kind of soggy. For those of you who golf, it was a cart path only day, and we had a lot of grass around the shoes. And the discussion started much like you would expect. You know, he asked me about my family, and I asked him about his family, and we talked about banking, we talked about the practice of law, and we also traded some war stories as to how we survived the recession, 2008 through 2010. And then somewhere about the fourth or the fifth hole, the conversation turned to a question that I get quite often these days. And I love the question. And the question is, what's going on in Alpharetta? And the reason I love the question is because there's a lot of good things to tell. And so I began to tell him what was happening in Alpharetta and many of the things that you're doing in your businesses, some of the successes you're having. Things like this morning where we welcomed 400 new jobs with Ernst & Young's Global IT, and actually Governor Deal helped us do that. How many cities get to host the governor for one event in the morning and the lieutenant governor for another event in the evening? So thank you so much. So I was starting to tell him these things, and I guess this gentleman, he lives in Atlanta, was his hometown is Austin, Texas, and so I started to make kind of a comparison of Alpharetta and Atlanta, how we relate, and I started to make a comparison with Alpharetta and Austin, Texas. And you could tell at this point I had touched some nerve, some invisible line I had crossed. He immediately gave me an expression that wasn't too good, and so he went ahead, we played that hole, and by the time we got to the next hole, I think he had it. He had something to say. And so he pushed back a little bit. He said, how can you compare Alpharetta to Atlanta or to Austin, Texas, or to other regional or national cities? Alpharetta is a suburb. It's a suburb of Atlanta. It has no university. It has no airport. It has no reputation outside of the metro Atlanta area. And the businesses, he went further, the businesses in Alpharetta, they don't consider themselves Alpharetta businesses. They're Atlanta businesses. It's their Atlanta location. So let me pause there for just a minute. I think he knew that I was the mayor of Alpharetta, but I don't know if you've ever had one of those moments. But this was as if a new mother was walking down a park in a sidewalk, has the new baby in the stroller. Stranger comes up, says, hey, may I see your baby? She says, well, yes, you may see my baby. And he leans over, pulls back the blanket, sees the baby, and says, wow, ugly baby. And that's exactly what I was feeling at that particular time. And not just because Alpharetta is great. It is a great city. We've accomplished a lot of things. But also because in my heart, I know what Alpharetta can be, and I know what Alpharetta should be. And maybe you've experienced this. Maybe in your workplace. Maybe there's been an idea. Maybe there's been a product or a service or an organization that you knew better than anybody else. And when it was weighed relative to the criteria of the industry or the criteria of your company or however it was measured, you knew that it was more than that. You knew it better than anybody else, and the one word that popped in your mind was potential. For those of you who are parents, you may have experienced the same thing. As parents, we're biased towards our children, and we should be. But we also know our children better than anybody else. And so when they have their friends things may happen, maybe not in a good way, maybe their teachers judge them in a certain way, and maybe it's completely accurate. But what you know that they don't know is that the one word that summarizes them more than anything else is potential. So what do you do when the value of something is so locked in to potential? And it may be valuable, it may be successful, but what do you do when the primary value of something is locked in to potential? How do you extract it? How do you realize it? And how do you actualize it? As I thought about this question for tonight, one of the things that came to mind, and it was probably because where I was at the time, was the story of Starbucks. How many of you started your morning today at Starbucks? Maybe some of you. I'm there a lot. Not only am I there a lot, sometimes it is my second office. It's a good place to get things done. And so all of you are in some way or another are familiar with Starbucks. But what you may not be familiar with is how it got started. In 1971, it was started by a very unlikely group of entrepreneurs. It was a history professor, an English professor, and a writer. Not generally people who put a business together. And really, they put the business together so they could buy and sell coffee beans. They would roast them and then sell the coffee beans. And after a little while, they changed that process and began to actually open a coffee shop. And after 13 years, they grew it from one coffee shop to 2 coffee shops to 3 coffee shops to 6 coffee shops all across Seattle. They were wildly successful with 6 coffee shops. Now you're thinking, well, there's a lot more than 6. There's 6 in Alpharetta, granted. But if you think about it, my office has 1 location. So if you've got 6 locations across the metro Atlanta area, you are wildly successful. But what had not happened yet is that the potential had not yet been unlocked. So a former employee, Howard Schultz, they had a conversation. Ultimately, he purchased the company, and the method changed. And instead of selling a great cup of coffee, they changed that model from selling coffee to selling an experience around coffee. There's another story that helps me get there as well. Most of you, if you drive a minivan, there's probably French fries under your chair somewhere. When you get home, they've been there a while. They have probably different ages and different seasons. McDonald's is my 8-year-old daughter's very favorite place in the entire world, unfortunately. But McDonald's has a similar story. McDonald's started with 2 brothers. And these 2 brothers started a restaurant and ultimately created a system for making hamburgers. And they were successful. And they grew McDonald's from 1 store to 2 stores, 3 stores, to 8 stores. And again, wildly successful. 8 locations, in my mind, in my book, makes you wildly successful. And then, from the most unlikely of places, someone who was invested with them in terms of their success or failure, the milkshake equipment repair guy, Ray Kroc, they have a conversation, and they moved from selling hamburgers or a system for making hamburgers into a business system for making money. And they grew that from that point from 8 stores to now over 30,000 stores. And Starbucks has now just under 21,000 stores. And when we look at that, what we realize is something you've probably heard before. Most of you have heard the phrase, what got you here won't get you there. And so what happened is that you had a system that was in place to have one level of success, this wildly successful situation. But then there was an openness as to the method, and ultimately what changed was that method, and they went from simply having success to unlocking potential. Starbucks was successful with 6 stores. McDonald's was successful with 8. Then they became and unlocked that potential. So let me tell you, back on the golf course, I'll get back to that, but back on the golf course, I was really struggling with this ugly baby moment, and I was torn. I was torn between either A, continuing to pursue the business, or B, setting the record straight. And I don't know that I made a decision, but I hopped in the cart anyway, and we made our way down the path. And I decided, well, I'll just ask him a question. And I said, well, Did you know that Alpharetta has 60,000 residents, but 120,000 people work there? So it's not technically a suburb. I also asked, and did you know that Alpharetta has one technology company for every 100 residents? And now I was feeling a little more comfortable, a little more emboldened, so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to compare Alpharetta to Atlanta. So I said, you know, Alpharetta has a lower unemployment rate than the city of Atlanta. And our per household income is greater than the city of Atlanta. And not only that, we have twice as many technology companies right here in the city of Alpharetta as the city of Atlanta. And now I'm feeling like I'm probably not going to get business from this guy. So I moved on a little further. And so I started to compare Alpharetta with respect to the state of Georgia. Now, Alpharetta, at 600 technology companies, we have more technology companies than any other city in the state of Georgia. 4 of the top 10 high schools in the state of Georgia serve the city of Alpharetta. Alpharetta has the lowest unemployment rate in the state. And then I asked him one more question. I said, and did you know that of where Georgia leads nationally, that in the area of technology, where Georgia leads nationally in the area of technology, that 35% of those companies are in the city of Alpharetta. 35%. And since, again, I knew that business wasn't coming my way, I went ahead and started taking it expanded. So I want to talk about Alpharetta as it relates to the Southeast. Alpharetta has the biggest, most comprehensive fiber optic cable network of any other city in the Southeast. And those 600 technology companies that I told you about, well, around our borders in Johns Creek and Roswell, Milton, and South Forsyth, there's another 300 technology companies. And what that means is that our city has the highest concentration of technology companies of any other city in the Southeast. And as for Austin, Texas also has 600 technology companies, but Alpharetta got there without being the capital of the state, without a university, and without an airport, and with less than 1/10 of Austin's population. So then I decided, you know what, nationally, did you know? Forbes decided that Alpharetta was the #1 city to move to, and you probably heard the news within the last couple of months that Forbes have also named Alpharetta as the 6th fastest growing city in the country. 6th fastest. Now, all these things are great, and these things are certainly evidence of our success, and it was worth losing whatever business I might have had. But what it is it's success, but it has not unlocked our potential. And the question is, well, then how do we get to a point where we're able to unlock the potential of Alpharetta? Because potentially we could have the very best infrastructure of any city in the Southeast, in the country, in the world. When it comes to fiber optic cable, when it comes to broadband, when it comes to Wi-Fi, when it comes to that thing we haven't discovered yet or figured out what's going to keep us on the leading edge. And infrastructure is what got us here. Infrastructure was the first thing that put Alpharetta on the map and allowed so many of your companies to come to our city. But we could be, potentially, the very best in infrastructure. And potentially, we could be the very best city in the country, in the world, when it comes to innovation, and it comes to ideas, when it comes to new startup technology companies. It is possible. And remember those 900 technology companies I told you about? That high concentration of technology companies. Well, potentially, Alpharetta could have the most collaborative, the most tight-knit technology community of any city anywhere on the face of the earth. Potentially, Alpharetta could be known for the successes it has, not only in the metro Atlanta area, but in the Southeast, across the country, and across the world. The question is, how do we move from wild success, which is what we have, to potential? And what we learned from Starbucks and what we learned from McDonald's was that there was a method that got them to success, but then there was an openness to the method that intersected with the talent, the expertise, and leadership of someone invested in that company. That openness to the method intersected with the talent, the leadership, and the expertise of those invested in that company. In Alpharetta, about a year ago, we began that process of trying to leverage the talent and the expertise of so many of you in this room. And we've begun the process of moving from success to starting to unlock that potential. And what I want to do right now, what I'm tempted to do, is to say, okay, everybody, let's all get together. Let's all engage together. Let's all move forward towards Alpharetta, and let's figure out how to unlock our potential. But the thing is that while I certainly need everyone in this room's buy-in, and we certainly need a shared vision among this room, what we really need is people with talent, with expertise and leadership who are willing and able to engage with us as we work to unlock our potential. And so this is my ask. On your table somewhere, there's a card. And on that card, I'm not going to ask you to fill anything out. I'm not going to ask you to leave a check, although if you want to, it's Belle for... No, kidding. But if you'll take that home, and here's the thing, it's got the 4 teams that we have of our technology commission, and you know whether you or someone in your company, you may have a lot of experience with data, with a data center. You may have a lot of experience with infrastructure, or someone in your company does. Or maybe you're the person responsible in your company for marketing, for branding, or knowing where all the places that Alpharetta should be known. Or maybe you're the person who recently started a technology company, or have someone in your company who recently you've acquired their company and you know how that's supposed to be, or you have someone in mind. Or maybe, in your heart, you really want to help facilitate this technology community, these 900 companies. Well, what I'd like you to do, if you'll do just tomorrow and over the next couple of days, if you'll take some time and think if it's you or if it's someone you know, and you can email. My email address is there, and Peter Tokar, our Economic Development Director's email address is there as well. We would love for you to engage with us and be able to take that method and then take the talent, the expertise, and the leadership that you have and start to further unlock the potential that is Alpharetta. We have a great technology commission, and they're beginning that process. We would like you to partner with us, because here's how the technology commission works. It's 20 organizations, 10 large, 5 small, and then 5 partner organizations that are working together for this. And then we have our teams, and those teams are working to create an incubator for the city of Alpharetta. They're working to create an infrastructure plan for the city of Alpharetta, working on building community among you, our technology companies, in the city of Alpharetta, and then branding Alpharetta. Not only is the technology city of the South, but ultimately, we could be America's technology city. Back in the golf course, I had to ask him one more question. I said, well, did you know that Forbes also named us just the end of last year the 7th friendliest city in the country? And because we are the friendliest city in the country, I'm still going to pay for golf and the beer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for being part of Alpharetta.